share with me and get to know me.
Working within it so that you can trust
You got to
them.
be able to produce things. And I'll tell you why that production is so important. But before we go there, how do you use those two pieces of equipment? And
Success is not necessarily financial, but success is when you feel fulfilled in what you're doing. And then
to other women, they need to know their value, their worth.
But I believe everything that you put your mind to and you achieve, it's success.
Give us all the stuff.
Okay, I'll answer all 16 of those questions right now. I started in the music business at Sony while I was still...
And welcome to the show. My name is Renee Hastings, and I'm your host of Renee Speaks. Y'all, today's guest is truly a treat. I cannot wait to introduce you. She is a mother of 4 children with multiple food allergies, and she found herself on a unique path that would lead to incredible innovation. Back in 2004, she started cooking allergen-free snacks to ensure that her kids never felt out of place or excluded at schools or parties or social events. She was determined to offer snacks that were both safe and delicious. She created treats that resembled what everyone else was enjoying, but were free from allergens. This determination and love for her children fueled her journey, which culminated in the birth of Safely Delicious in 2015. She's the driving force behind the research, development, production, sales, marketing, and the overall strategic direction of the business. With a diverse educational background spanning fine arts, sociology, and women's entrepreneurship, she brings a unique perspective to her role. Her efforts haven't gone unnoticed, as she's been honored with various recognitions and awards, including the 2021 Her Impact Pitch Competition Early Stage Business Winner and the 2020 Nova Award. Y'all, please put your hands together for my friend and guest, Lisa.
Hello, Renee.
Welcome to the show.
How are you doing?
I'm fabulous now.
I am too. This is awesome. Thank you for having me and inviting me to be part of your podcast.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure to have you on the show. I'm so thrilled. And as we were just chatting back in the background that, that's our secret conversation that we get to have when the guests before we go live or go start recording. I have been looking for a product like yours for forever, like forever, ever.
Wow.
And so I am so excited to learn more about you, your journey, how this all started. I know you have children who have allergies, and I just want to know all the things, like what you had to go through. Tell us about your whole journey.
Oh my, we'll try to give it the Cliff Notes version because it just took a while. But I, as you mentioned, I have 4 children. And so child number 3, my son, when he was 18 months old, he kept having all of these GI issues. And even prior to that, when I was nursing them, I was noticing just that like they wouldn't feel good, or they'd have issues if I ate something or drank some whatever. Didn't really put it all together until he was 18 months old and really had some serious GI things happening. So get him tested, and come to find out, I knew he was sensitive to dairy. So I was like, okay, find out, it turns out because I was giving him rice milk and soy milk and rice products and soy products, that's where it turned out he was allergic to soy. And I was like, oh, wow. So then, but from doing, when they did the blood work, it came back he was allergic to peanut also. Well, I hadn't given him peanut yet. So that was kind of like, I was glad we knew that and found that out early on. But it was, when that happened for me, that was in 2004. It was, I didn't really know many people who had children or family members with food allergies. I personally didn't, there wasn't anybody in my family that I was aware of that had allergies. I remember the first couple of days feeling extremely overwhelmed by the diagnosis, because then I start going, okay, no problem. We'll just avoid soy. Soy and peanut hasn't been an issue yet, but we'll avoid soy. We'd already been avoiding dairy. Again, not a big deal. My house was mostly dairy free. But then I started going, and you start reading labels, and I'm looking at everything in my pantry and everything in the refrigerator and the freezer. And no joke, 3/4 of the food we had soy or some type of soy byproduct. And I just remember sitting on the floor in my kitchen pantry. I literally just sat there and just bust out crying. I felt so sad and overwhelmed at the same time. Like, I felt sad because I was just like, oh gosh, what am I going to feed this child? Like, what I just didn't know. Like, oh, okay, if this is in most of the food, this is the only food I've ever known that I've eaten, my kids have eaten. So that's what initiated my journey of having to become very vigilant of looking at like going to the grocery store was a field trip. It was like a 2 to 3 hour. It wasn't just run in and grab stuff anymore. It was literally, I had to figure out how to replace almost everything that we were eating that needed to be soy free plus dairy free, because I was already doing that. And so started doing that with him. And then a couple years later, my youngest, when he was probably around, I want to say 14 months old, 16 months old, I knew, again, with him, just from issues when he was nursing, like I knew, okay, he can't eat dairy. And I knew he was sensitive to wheat, and, because he'd have skin issues. Like, I knew there were some issues going on with him. And then, so same thing, I'm giving him dairy-free things and, trying to be all vigilant about this with him. And I had given him, I had made, I think it was like some ground beef, and I had mixed into it some cheese product, and it was made with cashews, dairy-free, but I'm like, so it was made with cashews. And so he's like feeding it to himself using his hands, whatever. And all of a sudden he starts breaking out in hives, starts vomiting. And I'm just like, I'm like freaked out. I'm like, oh my God. And so I'm like trying to figure out what is it? My ex-husband, his dad at the time, was like, we're trying to help him. And I'm trying to figure out the ingredients on the food I just fed him. Like, what could it be? And so then we called the doctor, and they're like, okay, give him Benadryl, watch, wait and see. Don't take him to the hospital. It was just this whole, like, I didn't have this with Brennan, but it's like, okay, now with Spencer, well, he had a reaction. So it turned out we did the work on him, and he was allergic to the cashews, the tree nuts. And the test also showed he was allergic to the peanut. And then he did, but then after that whole experience, I want to say when he was probably around 18 months old, again, I was noticing that he was, there was just, from when he was very little, there were a lot of foods that little babies normally would eat, that he was always gagging up, throwing, like he just wasn't tolerant. So then we did a food allergy test. So typically people will do an IgE test, and when they're checking for allergies, for food allergies. And I always think of that, the E is like EpiPen. Like, if you are allergic to peanut or tree nut, you're going to need an EpiPen. You can, the IgE test, kind of, that's how those are connected. That's my thinking. That's usually what that means. There's another test called an IgG. That one, I think of that G, that second G, gut. Like, you could have a reaction anywhere from 24 to 48 hours after you've eaten or drank something. And it's still a reaction. It's an intolerance. In the medical world, they won't say, oh, it's an allergy, but it is, because your body is having its own type of allergic reaction, if you will. Yeah. And so with Spencer, I actually went and did an IgG. I did with all the kids. I did an IgG food panel. I think it was 96 foods that were tested. And it was like garlic was on there. It was fruits and vegetables and you name it, like 96 different items. And then the test that we used or did, it came back with results that were scored on a basis of 0 to 6. Now, there's some tests that will do 0 to 3. The one we did was a 0 to 6. And so when I get the results back from Spencer, I felt like I was having this deja vu moment like I had with Brennan years before, because literally more than half of those foods on there were 4, 5s, or 6s for Spencer. Like, I mean, I had gotten to where I actually created like this little, it was like a little mini notebook, if you will. And I had a page because I did it on all the kids. So then all of a sudden I realized, okay, why like my two older kids, they were having issues, weren't as severe or serious. But when I started taking out some of those ingredients that maybe were that 4, 5, or 6, how were improving, behavior issues were improving, GI, other little subtle things were improving with all the kids. So it was like I had a notebook and there was a page for every kid and it listed exactly like what they could eat. And then I had some, and then there was one page that actually had all 4 kids and it was a short list of what everybody could eat. So it's like we were going out to eat. This is what everyone can eat. Only this. Like, if I'm making a meal, it's gonna, and everybody can eat this if I use these ingredients, and everybody's good. So,
right. Oh my.
it was great. So that was kind of, again, so with Spencer, it was like a bigger journey now because now it's even more. So, egg was on there. So going back to that beginning for me, we were allergic to the dairy and the gluten, wheat products and that stuff. Egg got added in, soy, and then we had peanut and tree nut. So 6 of the top 8, my kids could not eat.
Wow.
And so that was back then, the only brand that existed when we were first getting into this world of allergen-free food was Enjoy Life Foods. They had just come on in the market a couple years beforehand, and they had some delicious snacks. And so that was a little blessing to kind of have, but I started to, it's like, but there weren't a whole lot of other options. So as you shared in the opening, I started just kind of looking at, okay, what are kids eating when my kids are going to these social events and going to birthday parties or things at school, and I'm needing to send them with stuff. And it's like, I'm sorry, but the solution used to, here's a piece of licorice while everybody else is eating everything else that's really tasty, sweet, chocolatey, very dessert-like, versus a piece of licorice. I mean, that was typically what they would do. They'd give them a piece of licorice or Skittles or something that looked and tasted. It had nothing to do with what the actual snack was that everybody else was eating.
Right.
So yeah. So anyway,
Wow.
so that was kind of the beginning of figuring out what I could do differently so that they could feel included. And then I was meeting other families and kids who also had food allergies. So then like my snack, which one? It's this little guy right here, my classic bite. This was the original one that I started making. People will say it is reminiscent of the Muddy Buddies or Puppy Chow, except it doesn't have any of the allergens in it. It's a toasted rice cereal piece. It's got all the chocolate, but it has a peanut butter-like ingredient, but it's no nuts. And a buttery liking, but it's no but like, so I just basically looked and figured out like, okay, these were all the ingredients I was using individually to replace other ingredients. And then as I started looking at what kids were eating overall as snacks, started figuring out like how to create recipes, bringing things together like that. And so, so the Safely, that classic bites, been making that for a very long time before it turned into being my product that started all of this. So yeah.
Wow. What an incredible story. And I'm sure that, learning that your youngest son had all these food allergies was probably the pivotal turning point in, everything. Like something's got to be different. And I can relate so well to your story. There's a place here where I'm from in Atlanta called Progressive Medical Center, and there are a lot of naturopaths there, and they test for everything you can think of. And so they have these food allergy tests that they give you when you come in with complaints about different things. You might never even associate a food allergy with some major medical complaint that you have, but because of the food, you're having all of these issues, even as an adult. And so I took one of those tests. It was by no fun by any means or any stretch of the imagination, but it came back so revealing that I had all of these immediate food allergies. But then when you were talking about the delayed onset allergies, like I could have an egg today and it not affect me until Saturday or Sunday.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like 2 whole days. I've eaten this thing 2 days ago, and 2 days
Right.
later, it's gonna now make me itch and scratch or have an upset
Right.
stomach or whatever.
Right.
I'm like, what in the world? I had never heard of such a thing before I went to this place. And now to hear you talk about it, I'm like, this is a real thing. Like other people
It's
really suffer from this.
And what's unfortunate is that the IgG test it's a valid test. It is extremely revealing and can answer so many questions that people are having. But because I learned this years ago, most insurance companies don't pay for the IgG test because it's considered experimental and a few other words that they used with me when I inquired decades ago about getting it covered by insurance. And um, I had asked a pediatrician friend that I knew who was a big proponent for the IgG testing. And he would, that was something he definitely did with all of his pediatric patients and stuff, and saw huge value. Like it was very helpful for him with his practice and taking care of his patients. And he said, because one of the big reasons why is because it's not taught in medical schools. So the American Academy of Pediatrics and the insurance, like it's then not recognized as a valid form of, I guess, assessing people health-wise because it's not taught in medical school. So because it's not taught as a standard practice, then it's considered experimental with the insurance companies. And I was like, how do we change that? I don't know how you change that, but go to the medical board, be like, hey, I need you guys to change your curriculum. You got to include it. But it's amazing though that so many people, when I share that part of my story, or somebody will tell me things that they're experiencing or whatever, and I will tell them about IgG in addition to IgE, and they'll go to a chiropractor or a naturopath, or they'll find, you could even order these tests online and then take it to a lab and have it done yourself if you wanted to. And like you said, it's very revealing. Like it can hugely improve a person's quality of life, having that information and making a few changes in their diet.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. I could not agree more. And I'm like living proof.
I know, my kids too. There's lots of people that are living proof that if anybody watching or listening is any of the things we're talking about, it is a good test. Definitely worth in looking into and considering it if you're struggling with trying to figure out what's going on.
Right. And trying to figure out, why does my stomach hurt after I eat this or whatever. I mean, there's so many different. Why does my head itch, or why does my skin itch, or just all the,
or my joints ache. Like if I eat dairy anymore, it's one of those things I'm like, as I've gotten older, I always jokingly say, dairy does not like me anymore. Like it used to not like me, but now it like literally hates me, to where it used to be, okay, I wouldn't feel good the next day. Now it's literally like, if I go to Starbucks and get a coffee drink and I'm like, I need coconut milk, and they mess up and put dairy cow's milk in the thing, within 20 minutes, my stomach's going, so it's like, it knows, it so knows. But I've been tested IgE and it's fine. There's nothing wrong. I have no allergies, but I'm like, hey, on IgG, I am like at the top. I'm like, it's off the chart for me.
Right. And it's so weird that those tests don't talk to each other, or like, they don't cross. I'm like, how can it be on this one, but not on that one?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. But thank goodness for the IgG test. And I'd forgotten what it was even called. I just know that the test itself was almost traumatic, but so worth it.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So as you were growing this business, so you had this life experience, it prompted you to start a business. And you're the driving force behind it all, the research, the development, the production, all of the marketing, and all the things that it takes to build a successful business. How do you manage all the diverse aspects of the business while maintaining a super consistent brand identity?
Oh my, what a great question. Some days I manage it really well, really, really well. And in other days, it's just, it works, and some days it doesn't work.
Right.
It depends on what is the most important thing I might need to do for my business at that moment, and where I'm putting all my attention, to how I'm going, like, is everything going to get a little bit equally? I'm going to be able to equally spread my time into all those different areas, or it might be I'm spending more time on one thing, and then when I feel like it's in a good place, then I switch to something else. So I really don't have a good system, honestly, of how I think how do I say it? Like I manage it, but I'm not sure I could teach someone how to manage it other than I just go with it. From the moment I even started this business, like I feel it, I go with it. Like recently, it was like, okay, I needed to do some changes with regards to like our different online platforms, and was talking with my accountant about some financial things with the business and our sales. And I'm like, okay, so right now I'm going to work on that. And that's what we're going to focus on. And I need to get that taken care of. The marketing part, we used to have a pretty good sized team. And then as COVID happened, and then post COVID, we've had our staff, if you will, has slowly declined like a lot of businesses. So I have found myself having some of those hats. I used to have other people would help me with like the social media stuff, the marketing. Like initially when I started my business, when you're a solopreneur, you, at least for me, I taught myself and I figured out how to do all those different aspects of having a business. I just needed to. But then as I was able to start hiring people to help do some of those things came off my plate, and I could spend more time focusing on other aspects of the business. Over the last few years, or I was in the last couple of years, some of that has fallen back more on my plate now. So like the social media marketing, that kind of stuff, we will have a lot of that going on, really, really consistent. And then it'll be kind of quiet for a little bit because all of a sudden I'm having to work on something else and put all my energy into that. So, so managing it, I think, what do they say? It's like that whole idea of, I want the business to be seen and perceived as, I started this business to help people. And that is my driving force, my focus, my mission is to help people with food allergies. So when it comes to all those other parts of my business, how I manage all that, again, it goes back to, is what I'm doing the most important thing I need to be doing right now, so that I'm making sure I'm achieving what ultimately my mission is with why I started Safely Delicious.
Right. And that makes so much sense, because you have to handle the most important things first. And like you got with your accountant or your finance person, and you had to deal with those things. What do we need to do for these numbers to make more sense? So, and when you're doing that, it's definitely your focus. And you have to just keep the first things first, the most important things first. And while handling those first things, not forgetting why you're doing these things. You are on a mission to help people with food allergies get better snacks in their lives so they can feel included in different activities. And even though they can't eat all of the things that everyone else is eating. So I think that is just smart. That's just a smart business to doing those things. And social media, while it is great, we love it. We, at Executive Help Now, which is my business, we have social media managers who do these things, and they're also admins and bookkeepers. And I mean, we have a whole team of folks who do these things, but these are services that are available to you whenever, that you decide that you want to get back in and lighten your load a little bit, but not so much. It's not about us. It's about you and us helping you do what needs to be done. Because as a solopreneur or as an entrepreneur, because you do still have a team, it's not just you by yourself, the load can get heavy. Even with a team, it can get really, really heavy. And especially as a mom and as a wife and as a business owner, that load gets so heavy, so heavy. I totally get it and totally understand it 100%. And balancing the demands of producing an amazing product without compromising quality, which I'm sure, is another thing that you have to deal with, is how can we keep our product one of the most delicious that people continue to buy over and over and over again.
Absolutely. One of the inspiring things for me with my business, I keep going back to my kids, but the products that we have different flavor options. They've all been kid tasted and kid approved. So it wasn't like I was like, oh, I think this sounds great. All four of my children, Connor, Elizabeth, Brennan, and Spencer, all four of them have at some point in the beginning of this journey made suggestions of what flavors they thought we should try and what they thought would be good. And then they were taste testers and stuff. So here's another part of the story. When I started Safely Delicious, I actually I had gotten divorced in 2013, and I had been a stay-at-home mom for 17 years. So after I got divorced, I had to return to the workforce. And I had gotten a job at one of our local church, one of our parishes locally. And I had taken my snack to work, the classic bites, but back then I called it yummy bites. Or something. It didn't even, it was just my snack. And I took it to work to share with all the church ladies I worked with. And they all thought I bought it somewhere. And I told them the story. And they were like, oh my gosh, you should sell it. And I had been praying about, okay, God, I love my church job, but I'm going to need to have another stream of income coming from some, maybe this is the answer. And so there was not a whole lot of, I'm going to think on it. I have a business plan. I got it was one of those, literally, they said, you should sell it. And I went, okay. And that same day I was online. I'm like, what should we call it? Like, we ended up having like this, it was crazy. Like my boss, I think he was gone for the day, like off site for something. And so we're like all in the office instead of half working and half helping Lisa figure out like what I'm going to call it. A friend of mine's telling me all about like where I can get like these little white bags, that little white coffee bags with the window. And it was just like Safely Delicious was, okay, I like the name. It's safe and it's delicious. And it was literally that like straightforward. And so, but when I started the business, I was working full time. And so I'm doing this full-time job Monday through Friday. I'm starting Safely Delicious the evenings and weekends. I'm renting a space that's 45 minutes away after I'm in business for a year and wanted to get it into retail. So now I'm like, okay, now I got to find a commercial space that's allergen free, that is safe to make it. And it's like 45 minutes away. And I'm driving there on evenings and weekends, lugging everything over in my Pilot, making it, bringing it all, kept doing that. And then we attended a trade show in 2017, the Fancy Food Show in New York City. And it was crazy because it was there that we got discovered with one of the management teams for one of our local grocery stores here in Kansas City, the Ball's Food Stores people. Their management was in New York at the show, and they came by. There was an area of other Kansas businesses. We were all kind of in a group together, and they tasted the snacks and loved them. And they were like, why have we heard about you? And I'm like, well, I'm kind of new and not really in retail yet. And they're like, well, we need to get you in our stores. And a couple weeks later, I met with them and we were off to the races. And it was like, so I'm like trying to now I'm like, okay, going to my boss and be like, can I come in late or work late? Or work? Like, I got them to do deliveries. Like that's like a whole other part of and I am still doing it. I still do direct deliveries to 34 grocery stores for 2 different grocery store chains here in Kansas City and surrounding area. But I kept doing that for about a year. And then finally the business was starting to take off and I built out my own little commercial space. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take a leap of faith. I quit my job at the church. I put it all into this and here we go. And so we've been off to the races ever since, growing and growing and growing. But when I worked at the church, whenever initially the Classic Bites was the first product. And then the Dark Bites, so that's this little guy right here. The Dark Bites product, it's made with dark chocolate. And so originally the Classic Bites, we would use the semi-sweet chocolate. And so we were getting, again, back to how quick this just all went bang, bang. Okay, I'm going to do it. And then my mom, she's an entrepreneur and she makes these little religious fingertip towels. And there was going to be one of those like holiday church bazaars at my church coming up in 2 weeks. It was like in 2 weeks. And I call and tell her, I'm like, hey, I'm going to start this little business. And she's like, oh, well, come share my booth. You can sell your stuff at the booth. And I was like, okay. And so 2 days before the event, I'm like trying to figure out labels to put on the bags. I'm putting things in Ziploc bags. I'm putting ingredients in alphabetical order. Like I knew nothing. And my boyfriend's like, hey, why don't you try making that with dark chocolate? I went, okay. So then that's how Dark Bites was born. It was like, oh, well, Dark Bites with dark chocolate. So now I have like 2 products at this church fair. And then I like coffee. So then I was like, I used to like to eat those chocolate bars with coffee in it. So then I kind of made a recipe. And so there's like the Mocha Bites. Where's my little Mocha Bites? I'll show you guys the Mocha Bites. Here's the Mocha Bites. And so it does smell like coffee. Like if you like coffee, you will love Mocha Bites. It's delicious. Wow. It smells like coffee. It's just, you open it up and you feel like you're opening up a bag of coffee. It's delicious. Wow. But anyway, so then I had those 3 and it was like, okay. And then my kids are like coming back with other ideas. So then as I started making up a variety of experimenting with a variety of recipes, doing a little research, developing, doing all that kind of stuff, I would take these big circle containers, and I would make these batches of all these different versions, and I would have them numbered, and so they're unmarked with numbers, and I would take them to church or up to work. And so between all the church staff and then all the school staff, like literally about 100 people I would get to taste and rate and rank all these. And that was my focus group. That is how all of our products come, is the church focus group and my kids being like, and it was the best. I would do it again in a heartbeat. I think if I decide I want to come up with some more flavors, I'm going to show back up over at St. Michael's with, some bins and be like, okay, guys, everybody during your lunch break, kind of give me some feedback on these things. It's almost like your children. So you can't really say which one's my favorite because, I like them all for
They're on your
different seasons, different reasons. If you're drinking red wine versus white wine, or drinking coffee, or, a glass of milk, whatever. So, but Lemony Bites. So this one, funny story with this one. This one, the first time I made it, I was all excited. I thought, oh, it tastes like lemon bars. Yum. This is awesome. And then I had my son Brennan, before I even took it to work, I had him taste it. And he was like, he's the one who suggested doing the lemon. And so he tastes it and he's like, oh gosh. He goes, because this tastes like soap.
Oh no.
I am not looking for soap to be the aftertaste. That is a problem. So I changed the recipe. I took it to work. I kid you not, I think I had to tweak that recipe 4 different times before we nailed it.
Wow. That is so funny.
And then the company that makes the chocolate for that one, because we use white chocolate. So the pumpkin-y bites and the lemony bites, we use white chocolate. They changed their chocolate. Well, here was another big life learning moment. I have a recipe, but guess what? If they change an ingredient, the ingredient might taste different. It might change the taste of the recipe. Well,
right.
It did.
Or have an allergen in it.
Exactly. They changed the ingredients in the white chocolate, and I go to make it, and it was so bad. It was so horribly bad. It smelled bad. It was so bad. And I'm like sending it to the owner of the chocolate company. I'm like, what's wrong? What did you do to your chocolate? And
yeah.
Like months. We find they were still tweaking some stuff on their end. We got it tweaked, but it was crazy. Like just how I had just mastered the flavor, and now I've got to remaster the flavor and tweak it and change it.
I never even really thought about the fact that when your product is dependent on other suppliers and they change their thing, man, what an impact that has on your business. And, on this particular line.
Oh, yeah. It impacts it, because then it also impacted packaging, because now I have to change the packaging because the ingredient list is different. The nutrition information is different. I mean, it just, yeah. Or we had a situation, our Minty Bites, one of the ingredients we were using, the company that we were getting it from, they'd been in business for decades. They just decided to close their doors. And it was like, okay, people tell you when you're in food, or I guess it might be in other industries, but with food, like you have your, like, I guess if you want to say, there's always kind of like a backup plan, if you will. So it's like, okay, here's the main ingredients that we use every time to make this product. But on the slight chance, that ingredient went away. Like, is there another one? Is there, could you easily replace it? Maybe you do have to change nutrition, but you could replace it still with something similar, change your recipe, make it still work. Well, unfortunately, fortunate and unfortunately, in the allergen-free world, sometimes there's only one product. There's only one. Like somebody figured out how to make that and make it a certain way, and that's it. I truly feel like, we've been able to continue growing and being successful and continuing to be as a business. Some days I really do feel like God's hand is in this, because especially during COVID, and we were having supplier issues, and like everybody was having, is if one of our companies, if they had closed down because of COVID, there was a couple of companies that we are dependent on. If they had not made it through COVID, our business would have shut down. There wasn't a backup product we could have replaced it with. So where with the Minty Bites, it was like, okay, well, now I'll just retweak the recipe. I was able to do something different and still make it smell and taste and be delicious like Minty Bites, but that required a package change. I had to change the packaging. So
and there's expense with that. There's expense with that.
Yes, there is. Sometimes when you start a business, it is good and helpful to have like a broker, or use, like where I'm going with this is with packaging. I
Okay.
did not know or understand early on the world of packaging. So when I needed to get packaging, when I was going to go to that fancy food show, I could not show up with white coffee bags with little windows. Like I needed the bags. I mean, this is probably the third version, but it's pretty much the same concept, colors, and from 2017. But what happened was when I was like, okay, I need packaging. I need a company to help me with packaging, and I need a graphic designer to help.
Right.
I was given a list of potential businesses, and I called a few of them, and I started learning and understanding the world of packaging. And it can be very overwhelming and very confusing because there's different types of packaging, and the price point literally can go from one extreme to the other. And so I called one company, and I didn't realize until I worked with them. They helped me get my first round of bags. Then we went to get a second round of bags. And when I got the second round of bags, the coloring was all messed up. Like my teal looked like it was baby blue. It was messy. And so then I wanted to return it and deal with, okay. And for that first year, I was thinking the people I was working with, they were the printing company. And I come to find out they were a broker that worked with different printing companies. And then there was a particular printing company that they used for my business because they could do digital, or they could do, it was a lot less expensive than if it was a company that was using plates, and then you're committed and you have to buy like hundreds of thousands of bags. I only need 10,000 bags to start. I don't need 100,000 bags. But
Right.
it was this very educational experience for me, learning and understanding the whole packaging world, because when that all happened and I was not getting the results that I needed, and they weren't making things right the way they should have been, I then kind of decided, I'm like, I didn't realize you're a middleman. So then I started researching and finding packaging companies. And by that point, I had already been learning and understanding the different terminology. So then I knew what I was looking for, and just started. I literally found our current packaging company from a connection on LinkedIn that got me connected with someone else that they knew that is in Illinois. And so anyway, it's amazing when you're starting your business to not be afraid to sometimes just go to the top. Just go, sometimes it's helpful. Like it was helpful to have that little stepping stone. But I think when you can figure it out and do it on your own, you will save time and money and get better results, because then I'm like, okay, now they're dealing with me, the owner, and I'm dealing with that owner, and we're on the same page. And the pricing was also significantly less by not having that middleman for me.
Right. Absolutely. And that makes perfect sense. And so I love the points that you're making about networking and taking advantage of each experience, learning from each experience, and knowing the time to cut the cord, basically, from having to go to this middleman, but using them for learning opportunities or learning moments, to learn what you need to know so that you can cut them out.
Right.
And
Exactly.
then go directly to the top to get what you need for less in a short amount of time.
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
So it all serves a purpose. It absolutely does. And it's just wisdom to know when is the right time. And I love that you're a praying woman, totally relied on God for all of it, because God is, of course, the source of everything that we need, whether it's wisdom, knowledge, people, all of the things. He totally is so amazing. You and I can relate to your story so well. I mean, you and I have been through a lot of the same experiences, and even though we're in completely different fields, as a business owner, as a woman, having to make hard choices, having to be brave, to have conversations with people that you think are up here and way above you, and getting over the imposter syndrome, and or getting over this idea that, oh, maybe I'm supposed to just be talking to the middleman, I'm not supposed to talk to the higher up guy, all of the getting over all of that, putting stripping all of that just away,
look, you're the boss, you know,
Right.
and as the
Exactly.
boss, you've got to be the boss.
Exactly. That's exactly. Well, a couple of thoughts with our topic being about, turning the passion into profit. So I was reflecting on that and and it was so some of the thoughts that actually came to me, and I'm like, okay, I've been doing this a while. I've talked about passion and profit and all that kind of, what it means. How do you know if it's your thing or not? Should you do it? All that kind of stuff. And one of the things that it hit me the other day, and I'm like, I had to write this down. I was like, is that sometimes you have to keep working elsewhere or do temporary work to pay your bills while you're turning your passion into profit. And that, like, it's like I was living it and doing it, but it didn't really, until I was preparing for our podcast, it was like, it's not just immediate. Just because if you have a passion, go for it. I mean, follow your gut, follow, whatever fills your spirit, fills your heart, fills your mind, if it comes to you in prayer, whatever. But know that you may not be able to, just because you have the passion to do it, it's not going to be instantaneously profitable. And making sure that you're still doing whatever you need to do to pay the bills and to get the business going, and making sure you also, though, have a backup plan when your passion isn't profitable. Like, so what are you doing if it's not yet profitable while you're turning it into profit? I think those are just big things to keep in mind when, which you get excited. I'm still excited. I get all excited about all the possibilities and opportunities and the potential and my long-term goals and my short-term goal, that kind of stuff. But I still need to make sure I can pay the mortgage and keep the lights on and food on the table. I still need to make sure I'm taking care of those things for my family. If you don't have a family, for yourself. So while you're turning your passion into profit, I think those are things people sometimes forget and just feel like, and sometimes it can take years. Like, that's the other thing, is this is not for the faint-hearted. When you're going to go after a passion, you just have to recognize and know and understand that following passions, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. That's really the best way to say it.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. It does take time. It also, takes faith. It also
a lot of faith.
takes, like you said, having a plan and a backup plan. That's just being responsible, to make sure that while you are living out your purpose and living out your dreams, that you are still being responsible with the resources that you're given along the way. It is. I love how you made that point, that it doesn't mean that you shouldn't go after your dreams. It just means that along the way of you achieving your dreams, that you still take these responsible steps to ensure that your livelihood is maintained and your family is supported, or you're supported as an individual, and you're not being a burden to anyone else while you're trying to achieve your dream. Does that make sense?
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
sometimes
absolutely. It's like you don't want to be taking away from somebody else's dream.
Right. well, sometimes people will live with their parents, or whatever, and not go and work a full-time job or whatever while they're pursuing their passion. And because they're pursuing their passion, they're being a burden to their parents when they shouldn't be. But I mean, I'm not talking about grown-ups, not.
No, right. No, but I understand what you're saying. Just to exactly that. Every one of us has within us something that inspires us, drives us, gives us passion, gives us motivate, whatever that might be. And whatever it is that you have, if, to your point, is it's like, just because it's what you have, it may not be what someone else, they may not be in that same lane with you. And it's not that they don't support you, but they're just in a different place. They have their own dreams, their own motivate, like they have their own stuff. And so when you go and move your lane into someone else's lane, and they didn't ask you to come into their lane, they didn't invite you, you just kind of showed up in their lane. Now somebody might say, hey, absolutely, let me jump into your lane, or come on over to my lane. I'm happy to be part of your dream too. But to assume that parents, or for somebody, grown children, or even best friends, or a significant other, anybody, I think, just being sensitive to that is important when it's your passion. Because just because, it's not that they're not supportive, they just don't feel it like you do.
Right, exactly.
Your passion isn't necessarily their passion. And so just being understanding and respectful of that. And and being okay with that, not taking it personal. That's, I think, that's a key thing, is sometimes those that are closest to us, if they don't seem to be having that same level of passion or excitement as we do, I think sometimes we can take it personal. Like, okay, what, there's something wrong with me, or something wrong with my product or my idea, like what, and it has nothing to do with any of that. I guess feeling secure enough with your own passion and not being dependent on what other people think or feel about your passion. Because I think if you allow that to happen, then, not to pass judgment, but then it's like, then you question, well, how strong is that passion? And if you can be that easily swayed or easily discouraged, then maybe this is really going to be a hobby. It's not going to really turn into a business. I'll use this analogy where I'm like, I feel like a Clydesdale, or some days I need to be like a Clydesdale. I got to put those side blinders on and just look straight ahead. I cannot try to look to the right or the left. I just have to look straight ahead and keep moving forward. That's all I can do. Put one foot in front of the other and move forward. Because if I try to look right or left, I'm going to fall, or I'm going to trip, or I'm going to get that outside noise. Like, trying to keep that outside noise out of your head, I think, is critical when you are starting a business, because there's so many, you really have to get some thick skin, have a good strong spine, and know that with every, and I know this seems repetitive for people that, if you watch Shark Tank or motivational people, they always say the whole idea of it's like, you learn from your failures and your successes. And it's true though, it is. It's like, but when you're living it, you don't understand it. You can't connect, like, why is this happening? Recognizing and knowing that, okay, this might really stink, but what am I going to get out of it? Or what, the big lesson, like, okay, that didn't work. I mean, I've had quite a few through the years. Fortunately, none have been too over the top majorly. I mean, I've heard some doozies that other people have had, and I don't feel like I've had too many doozies. Or if I have, here's the thing is, if I've had some doozies, maybe comparatively for other people, I'm like, oh, well, that was a doozy. And maybe I have had some, but it's how you handle them, or how you bounce back from them, or what you do with it. Like, taking that situation and be like, okay, I can't crawl under a rock, and I'm just going to have to plow through it and just find another path to take now, I guess.
Exactly. And that's part of business ownership. And I love that you mentioned there's going to be doozies. How are you going to handle it? How are you going to recover from this doozy? And you can, like you said, you can't crawl under a rock. You got to face it head on. You've got to get advice, talk to other business people who've been where you've been, or been where you want to go, or do some research, whatever it takes, but you can't let it stop you if it's your passion and if it's something you really firmly believe that the world needs. You have to have a strong enough why to keep going and to keep moving forward. That seems to be the theme for the day, is just keep moving forward. Put on those blinders and just keep moving forward.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and what you just said, I think is, just having your why being like, it really needs to be an unwavering why. And it's going to get challenged. That's the thing is, I think our whys, we get tested, we get challenged. It's like, oh, golly, okay, why, and I, not too long ago, had that kind of a situation where I thought someone was going to buy the business, and then it didn't work out. And then, and you kind of take your foot off the brake, and you're thinking, okay, it's going to go this way. And now it's not going that way. And I was thinking I was going to have a different outcome. And now I'm not going to have that. It was almost like I had to check in with myself again. And a couple different people that are business owners themselves were like, Lisa, why did you, they kind of were posing back to me again, like my questions of, why did you start this? Like, what inspired you? What was your motivation? What is your why? And it was actually rather emotional for me as I was like thinking and praying, like, I know why I started this, and I know why I do it. And I've always had a very helping nature. And I think that's where this probably was rooted from, this idea of, I'm helping my kids because I'm a mom, but to find out that what I do that just seemed natural to do as a mom is helping all these other people, kids especially, have experiences when they're with other kids. Like, it was a game changer where my kids could go to school and take my snacks to school, but people didn't know, like, they didn't know it was my snacks. But they could sit there and eat them and share them, and the other kids ate them, and they all thought it was something else. For my kids, they felt like this is cool. This is awesome. I get to sit with my friends and we can all share the same snack together. And I'm not sitting on a special, I'm not having to go sit at the special table because they're all, instead I would send in the snack for everybody, whether they had allergies or not, and everybody would enjoy it. And my kids had that moment of feeling like, this is fun. I'm having this is what it's supposed, this is how it should feel. And, it's just, it's, and continuing to push the why. For me, my bigger why, it's like, this is where I'm at now. But when I think of, mentioned earlier about, long-term goals, short-term goals, things like that, with your why, having those goals is, I think, key too. Your goals aligning with your why. And so for me, like one of my long-term goals is I would love to see this business become, large enough, profitable, whatever, to where we could truly have money to create like some type of a nonprofit, some type of a fund, something, because as a parent, I know how expensive it is to do allergy testing. I know how expensive it is to get those EpiPens and any other medications. And, there are so many families that they're literally playing Russian roulette with their kids because they can't afford to do those things for their kids. And it's not for lack of love, it's lack of money and resources. And so I would love one day to have this business be that business that could be, out there helping communities that way, more than just, oh yeah, we've got great snacks, your kids can eat our snacks, but hey, let me also make sure your kids got an EpiPen. My kids had EpiPens. Your kids need to have EpiPens. Your kids need to have, they need to be able to go to that doctor and get tested and, make sure they're healthy and safe too.
Absolutely. That is so noble. I love that. I think that is fantastic. And I'm going to join with you in prayer for that, for you and your business. Because that is fantastic. And we need more accessibility to resources because as you know, things are changing in the world of medical insurance and things like that. And more and more things are not being covered.
Right.
And so like the availability of coverage is just getting less and less and less, and you're paying more and more and more for less. So anyways, I am definitely joining with you on that journey, and I'm just praying for favor over your business. I mean, it is just truly a wonderful service that you're providing, a fantastic product that you're providing. And the fact that the kids get to share it, I'll bet everyone wants you to be the class mom, like wherever your kids go to school. It's like,
exactly. Yep. Exactly.
I love it. That's fantastic. I used to be the soccer mom and the football mom and the band mom. And
yes, I've done all those. My kids are all my youngest now. It's like time for my youngest will be 17 next month. So I'm like, my oldest is like, we got 17, 20, 23, and 25. Nobody needs a room mom anymore, unfortunately. But it's funny because they're older and they have friends or significant others, whatever. And they'll still come and be like, hey, mom, can I get a few extra Like my kids, it's like, sure. Like they're coming, they're just going to take some snacks to take back to their apartment or give to their
or to the office.
Exactly. That's exactly. They go on vacations. They take my snacks with them. So they're still snacking away with my snacks, even though
that's awesome. Well, hey, next time they go on a trip, tell them to leave them with the hotel manager so that the hotel chain can start buying from you.
That's exactly. Yes, I love that idea. That's a great idea. I'm going to send. You're not only going on vacation, you're going to work for mom too. I'm going to send you a little care package.
That's right. Hey, and it
PR kit. Exactly. They need to take a little PR kit for mom and just kind of plug it. They need to help do some social media for me when they're on the road.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. Whatever. Snapchat and TikTok and whatever it is they're doing. Yeah.
I love it. Oh, and you know what? I just had this vision of the kids being at the beach and your snack being in the sand with the beach behind it, and then like taking a picture.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm like, I need to do that. I'm like, I'm in Kansas. I'm trying to think of a beach. We have a lake. I can't go find a lake, but I think the beachy thing would probably be a better look. But I need to do that. I go back to New York fairly regularly to see family and friends, and my boyfriend lives there. And so, you know, I'm like, I need to, you know, I do take them with me, and I do some of that, but then it's like hit and miss about taking the social media pictures because I'm there on vacation. I'm there to visit with people.
Right.
But I literally have to I take like this big Vera Bradley duffel bag with all the, you know, and I'm giving them to the airline stewardesses, and I'm giving them out everywhere I go.
Yeah, good. That's what you've got to do. You totally.
Yeah, but I need to do a beach scene. That's where I'm going with this. I need to, like, when we go to the beach, I need to take them and do a beach scene with it for sure.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I just saw it so clear. I was like, oh, that's the scene right there for that bag. That bag
Yeah,
is nice.
that's exactly.
Myself on the beach in my chair under my umbrella with my bag of safely delicious snacks while I'm sitting here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, Lisa, this has been such an educational and inspiring session that we've just had with you. And I truly just appreciate all the wisdom and all the nuggets that you've shared with us along your journey. And just know that whatever you've been through wasn't for nothing, because you now have a testimony of how you made it through, and that we can do it too. There's nothing that can happen that's too big or too hard for God, number one, to get out of, and for us to learn a lesson from, and so that we can share with other people so that they don't have to make the same mistakes, so the journey doesn't have to be as hard for them because of what we went through. And I just thank you so much for your transparency, your vulnerability, sharing all the things that you had to go through on this journey to get where you are today, this hugely successful businesswoman with these amazing snacks. I'm just so proud of you, and I'm so for you, and just wish you nothing but the absolute best in the future.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to be a guest on your podcast. It's been an honor and a privilege, and I'm most appreciative of it. So thank you for this opportunity. And I've loved spending this time with you and getting to know you as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, Lisa, you were made for something great. So go and be awesome.
Thank you. So were you.